Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the Showing Up to Your Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns, and I'm really excited to be here with you, as I really am every single day. I just love making these videos and podcasts and sharing these kind of principles and practices and thoughts and philosophies about how to live with mindfulness and also with something we call heartfulness, right? And this is something you're going to hear me talking about quite a bit lately. I feel this real transition towards really focusing on the compassion end of this work, and I hope you're as excited as I am to share that, because really, and I'm going to go over this in a couple of days, maybe tomorrow. The video tomorrow is going to talk about the heart and heartfulness, and how the heart actually has neurons just like the brain does. It's pretty intense. Did you know that the heart can survive without the brain? So anyway, we're going to talk more about that tomorrow. But today, let's talk about a really important matter of the heart, okay? And I'm talking about compassion. You know, I talk about compassion here a lot, but something occurred to me this afternoon, this morning. When I was out, I actually just got done Christmas shopping. We have two young kids, 9 and 12 years old, so Christmas for them is a pretty big deal. My wife and I haven't bought presents for each other in many, many years. It's kind of one of those things that doesn't seem to be worth the stress and the anxiety and the expense and all of that goes with it. So normally we don't, we do something nice for each other, and maybe we'll go out for a nice dinner or something like that. But we don't buy a lot of gifts. But with kids, you have to, right? Like there's certain aspects of being a kid and Christmas that it includes the gifts. So so like it or not, I braved myself for the hustle and bustle of the big box stores today. I had to go to, where did I go? I went to 3 different big box stores today. I went to Michael's, actually Michael's twice, because I realized that I went to Michael's and then I went to Target, and I went back to Michael's because there was something that Target didn't have that I needed to get for my daughter, and then I went into like Office Depot or Office Max or one of those to buy a wireless mouse for my daughter, because that's what she wanted for her computer, and and it's funny, I was braced for it. Now back in the day, a long, long time ago, when I was an advertising executive and I was a very, very stressed out individual and not very happy overall, one of the things about the holidays was all about buying the gifts. And I'm talking about buying like a lot of gifts. And this was way before I had kids. So it was just me buying gifts for like my sisters and my parents and my girlfriend or wife at the time, whoever that happened to be back then, depending on what period you want to talk about. But it was always about buying, and of course at this time I was living in New York City, so that meant kind of walking the streets and from one store to the other, and just carrying all these shopping bags, and it was almost like New York City at Christmas time. It's like that's what it's about. It's about buying stuff, and one of the things that happens is that when everybody kind of comes together and everybody's trying to buy stuff all at the same time, well, tempers start to flare, right? And stress starts to happen, and because people are exhausted, right? People are very, people are spending more than they should spend, but they can't help it. It becomes an addiction. There's so much in there. There's so much to unpack, and maybe that's something else we'll talk about, because that's not really what I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to take what we were talking about yesterday just a step further. And maybe tomorrow we'll talk about the whole idea of gift giving versus just presence with people. Yeah, I got a good idea for that. Presence as opposed to presents, right? I got you there. So anyway, I'm sorry to digress. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is that, yesterday we were talking about how, when we, in terms of self-compassion, right? Like one of the things that we automatically do as human beings, right? Whenever we feel that we are having a really difficult time, right? What we tend to do is we tend to feel like we are the only ones in the entire world, in the entire universe perhaps, who is having this hard time, right? That's how we feel. And even though this is, of course, and I do this with my clients all the time. I ask my clients a very simple question. I say, do you believe that there is anyone in the world who lives a problem-free life, doesn't have any difficulties at all, right? And everyone, of course, says, no. Is this some kind of trick question? Like, there's no such thing as, because even the people who we think have perfect lives, that there are difficulties that they're dealing with, right? And so logically, we all know this, right? And again, it's a sort of a thought experiment, if you will, that I do with every single client, and I ask them this at some point. Every single person, and every single one of them says, no, of course not. Everybody has hard times sometimes, right? But then something really funny and really strange and interesting happens when we are the ones having that hard time. All of a sudden, that logic, like there's a switch in our mind that goes off in that logic, and that logic flies right out the window. And all of a sudden, we are convinced, and I mean convinced, we are the only ones who could possibly be feeling that, level of suffering at this moment, like everyone else, like we're feeling it, like nobody else could possibly feel that, right? And of course, again, we know that this isn't true, but when we're in that place, that's when we feel like it can't be any other way. It's the strangest and most interesting thing that happens in our mind. And that's one of the things that self-compassion is all about, is about, reminding ourselves that no, 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 everyone is suffering on some level, right? And so I thought this morning, as I was heading out to do my Christmas shopping, and it was all of like 2 hours. I mean, it's not, like I said, it's not a lot of stuff that I have to buy or anything. My wife had the kids; they went on a little play date with their friends today. That's once a week thing that they do now, for thanks to coronavirus. But so it wasn't like a really big deal. But when I was setting out, I was thinking about what we had talked about yesterday, what I had talked about to you yesterday, about this fact that when we're in a time of suffering, pardon me, and when we're feeling a great difficulty in our life, right? That we have this sense of isolation, that we have this sense that nobody else could possibly be going through anything that going through the same thing that we are right now, right? Even though it's absolutely not true. So then I started thinking, well, if that's the case, right? If we all feel as though we are the only ones going through it, going through difficulty when we are, well, what if we turn that around? Right? And what if we turn around and say to ourselves, as we're out in the world and kind of shopping or just, going for a bike ride or going for a walk or going out to dinner or going grocery shopping, whatever it is that we're doing, right? If it's true that when we're suffering, we feel like we're the only ones who are suffering, and we don't tell people that we're suffering, of course, right? And we don't show that we're suffering, right? Because that would be a sign of weakness. Well, then in that case, can't we assume that most people that there's at least a portion of the people that we'll come across in any given day, again, whether it's shopping, riding the bus, going to work, wherever it is, whatever you're doing, right? Isn't it logical then to say that a portion of the people, if not the majority of the people that you're going to come across, are dealing with something? Right? They're dealing with some level of difficulty and some level of suffering on their own, right? And again, now during the holiday season, this is an enormous, a really, really common time for people to feel a level of suffering and a level of difficulty, right? Either, there's so many sources of it, right? People could be dealing with the pain of losing a loved one, in the past year, like, if you lost a loved one, say in February, right? The holidays is when it really hits you, right? It's like, oh God, that person's not here with us, because they're gone. Or even if it's a pet, right? Like it's, that hole is never more apparent and never more obvious to us than during the holidays, right? And then of course there's lots of other issues that are happening during the holidays which do cause people to suffer, right? There's the, feeling like we have to buy stuff for people even though we don't have the money, so people wind up going into debt. People run up their credit card balances at the holiday side. Even, I did some research for a stress reduction during the holidays, and it showed that, like, something like 70% of the people who answered this poll said that they have, financial struggles during the holidays. I mean, 7 out of 10 people who you meet are struggling financially, but yet they're still out there spending their money, because they feel so think about the suffering that's involved with that, right? And whether it's 70 or 50, I don't remember exactly what it was. It might have even been as little as 40. I'll get back to you on that. But whatever the percentage is, right? There's people out there, whether it's 4 or 5 or 7 out of 10 people are in these stores, and they're spending money that they don't have, right? And this is, in the study, it said even though these people felt as though they budgeted for the holidays, they're still feeling financial difficulty, right? And this has nothing to do with coronavirus, right? This is from last holiday season, right? So before the virus was a thing for us in the U.S. certainly. So just think about the levels and the sort of entanglement of suffering that's involved with that, right? If you're someone who already feels like you don't have enough money to spend during the holidays, and yet you're out there during the holidays spending money. I mean, gosh, so you're talking about the pressure of knowing, the pain of knowing that as you put your credit card down, it's money that you don't have, right? Like, that's a painful thing to feel. That's a lot of suffering to feel. But then, what is the drive to buy stuff that you can't afford, right? That's got to be some kind of addiction, right? And that, I can tell you firsthand, addiction is one of the most painful things that anybody can live with, right? Because it's constant. It's just this constant pressure that we put on ourselves, right? And so when we kind of think about all these different things that people are going through out there, and then of course it's not just the people who are shopping, especially during coronavirus, right? During COVID, you have people there who are essential workers, and they're wearing a mask for 8 hours a day, just walking around these stores and putting boxes away and trying to help people, and people are not necessarily very nice to them all the time. And of course, these people might be struggling with this gripping fear of, like, if I get sick, I can't pay my bills. I'm going to get thrown out of my home so I have to come here even though I might get sick, and even though maybe I have a relative at home who is at high risk. So the point is, I've just spun two little yarns here about how people could be suffering that are standing right next to you, right? And this is just right off the top of my head. I mean, give me a little while and a piece of paper and pen, I'll give you lots of more reasons that people could be suffering a great deal, right? But here's the key, right? I just said that it's people who are standing right next to you. I mean, 6 feet away these days, but they're standing right there, right? Those are the people who are suffering. These are not just imaginary people out there who are going through difficult times, but it doesn't apply to anybody who we would know, right? No, it's like the person standing next to you online, the cash register, the cashier standing at the cash register, the security guard at the front door, the person, the people driving in the parking lot, right? The waiters and waitresses and all the different people out there, right? They are all potentially suffering. We have no idea, right? Especially because, remember what we talked about with the self-compassion. When we're going through something, what we do is we isolate. It's almost like we hide. We go into hibernation somehow, right? That we don't want anybody else to know the suffering that we're having. So you'll see lots of people smile. And you'll see lots of people even say things that are really nice. You'll see people even feeling like, wow, this person's having a really nice day, and this is wonderful, right? But you have no idea what's behind that veneer. It could be everything the person has to keep that happy face on. It could take all the energy they have in their bodies to muster up that strength to put on that happy face, right? The point is that we just don't know. Right? And in fact, because of what we do know about suffering, and because of the way we know that we suffer from time to time, I think we could actually assume that more people are suffering, right? Because that might be somehow, again, right, when we're going through a hard time, what do? We think like, oh, we're the only person having this hard time, so everybody else out here is, all these other people in the store, they have plenty of money in the bank, or all these other people in the store, they don't have sick relatives at home who could get sick and get really dangerously sick through COVID-19. All these people out here, they're having great times. It's me who's suffering, right? And so what if all of us are suffering, right? What if 90%, 80%, 70%, whatever it is? But what if 7 or 8 or 9 out of 10 people that you meet are going through some kind of real difficult time, right? And the point is that we have no idea, right? Like you can't possibly know, right? Unless you ask, right? And even if you ask, I mean, if it's a pure stranger, you're not going to go up to him and say, "Hey, are you suffering today? Is there something in your life causing you?" No, you probably get some. I don't know what people would do to you if you walked up to him and asked him that question. But so the point, and even if you did ask someone, most people, they're not going to tell you. Like one of the most famous or most popular ways that we Americans greet each other is to say some version of "Hi, how are you?" Right? But never, ever, ever does anybody give an honest and sincere answer to that question, right? What do? We say, "I'm fine. I'm great, thanks. How are you?" "Oh, I'm good. Thanks for asking. How are you?" Right? That's what we do. We don't sit there, when somebody says, "Oh, hi, how are you?" We don't say, "You know what, I'm struggling. I can't pay my bills. I'm not working because of coronavirus, and this, the government stimulus is too late and too little, and my landlord's going to throw me out of my house, and my kids are miserable because they haven't been with their friends." We don't do that, right? You don't do that. Right? So that's where I think it becomes incumbent upon us. And yes, I do have a great practice for you here for this, but I feel like it becomes incumbent upon us to assume the suffering of others. Just take it as a given that the chance, because honestly, I'm sure the number is somewhere around like 70 to 80% of the people out there are dealing with some kind of difficulty, if not more than that, right? So you can bet that 7 or 8 out of 10 people that you're meeting, right, every day are going through some kind of difficult suffering. They're going through a difficult time, right? So if we can assume that people are suffering, then how does that change the way in which we interact with people, right? That's the key, right? If you know someone is suffering, right? If you know that a cashier behind the counter at a Michael's, right, who's dealt with, you're probably the 549th person who they've helped today, right? I mean, I don't know if that's a real number or not, but whatever. It's hundreds of people they have help every day. So you are one of a long line of customers that they have dealt with, and they're asking the same question. "Oh, would you like to put your phone number in? Do you have any coupons?" They're going through this thing all day long, right? And so if you knew that this person was having some kind of struggle behind you, right? Behind their pleasant veneer that they have to put up. They have to put up this smiley face or else they're going to lose their job, right? And they need this job to pay for food and rent and utilities and everything else, right? So if you knew for a fact that 25-year-old woman behind at the register on number 5 there, if you knew for sure that she was also struggling with, again, maybe it was a financial struggle, maybe it's a health struggle, maybe it's a romantic struggle, a social struggle, right? Like if you knew that she was just, cyber bullied, by some woman, like some kind of, like somebody posted a picture of her or something like that, or she was just broken up with by her significant other, or she has somebody at home who's ill, or maybe she's ill, or maybe she doesn't know how she's going to pay for food for Christmas, right? If you knew that, right? If you knew that for a fact, how would that affect the way you treat that woman? I'm sure it would. I'm sure it would for all of us, right? What would we do if we knew they were having a hard time, right? We would be a little more patient with them, right? We would smile a little bit more. Really, like, make eye contact and smile to them, even through the mask. Like, one of my friends, I love this. She, early on in the mask mandates and stuff, a real dear friend of mine said, like, one of her goals was to, every morning she set the intention to go out and smile so brightly underneath her mask that people could tell just from her eyes and the rest of her face that she was smiling at them. Like, that's such a beautiful goal, right? And that's what I mean. you would do that, right? You would make sure that you made eye contact with this young woman and smile to her, and you would say something nice. You would ask how her day is going. You would say happy holidays. You would say, I hope you have a great day. You would say thank you and please. You would speak softly, right? You wouldn't go up to them and say, this was the last one on the shelf, but I need 2 of them, and this one's broken. What are you gonna do? Because that's what people do to these poor people working in these stores. Like they just unload on them, right? As though these people are just just there for it. I mean, they're making like $15 an hour, and we're kicking them. All day. I see it all the time. I mean, I don't go in these stores a lot these days, but I used to, and I used to see it all the time. And in fact, I used to be one of those people. I used to be, your job here is to serve me, damn it, And so if I knew that someone was suffering, I wouldn't do that. Even back then, I wouldn't do that. And so I encourage you for the next couple of days, if you're going out shopping or you're just going and out in public, right? and beyond the next couple of days, this is something that doesn't have to just be during the holidays, right? This is something that could be true all the time, right? But I challenge you that when you're out there and you're interacting with people, assume that they are going through a hard time, because they probably are. Right? There's probably something in their life that is not perfect, that is causing them some level of difficulty and some level of suffering, some level of stress, anxiety, depression, what have you, right? And so assume that to be the case, right? Assume it to be the case when you're driving down the road and somebody, is looking to cut in. Let the person in, assume that people are going through hard times, because what that's going to make you do is that's going to make you act with compassion, okay? And when you're doing it because you think that people are suffering, well, guess what? Ding, 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 ding. That becomes an act of generosity, okay? And because you're thinking about the fact that people are having a hard time and you're paying attention to that, that's also attention. And because you're spreading this goodness, that's also looking at the optimistic outlook a little bit too. So resilience is the only thing that's the outlier in those 4 constituents of well-being. My point is that by being nice to other people, to be kind to other people, to show compassion and empathy to other people, do you know what that's doing? That is helping you. That is making you healthier. That is making you more well, and certainly more happy, because it feels just great. It really does, because you can see, right? You can see the face on the people that, you can see that they've just been beaten up, and the customers are just demanding and not nice at all. And when that one person, and I do it all the time now, I make a point of it. Like, I go into stores and I'm like Mr. Friendly. Like, I'm like, throwing glitter bombs, figuratively to everybody. I'm trying to make everybody as happy as I can, to be as kind as I possibly can. And you can see in the reaction of people that they don't get that very often. And so my challenge to you, or my invitation to you, is to be cognizant of this, be aware of this, really, pay attention to this as you're going, and turn up the dial on your compassion. Okay, so there's a great practice you can do, okay? Whenever you find yourself, a lot of times when we're online at a store, or we're, sitting at a red light in the car, what are we doing? We're reaching for our phones. And, let's see if anybody, do I have any Facebook notifications? No, let me check Instagram. No, let me check my email. Oh, green light, now I got to put the phone down, right? So instead of doing that, or same thing standing online at a store, same thing, or if you're standing outside the store waiting for someone else to come out, leave the phone in your pocket, unless you really need to do something. Like if you need to communicate with somebody, obviously I'm not going to prevent you from doing that. But instead of just going for your phone and trying to, distract yourself and pass the time, instead, do this, okay? This was a very popular practice for me before COVID, but now we're not really interacting with too many people out in the world these days. But whenever you are, look around, and every person you can see, okay, just take a second or two and just say in your mind, looking at them, you don't have to make eye contact, you don't have to look at their face even, you just look at the back of somebody's head and say, you know what, I wish you well. I hope that everything's good for you. And if you do that over and over and over again, what happens is it becomes a habit. Just like everything else I talk about in these podcasts and this YouTube channel, right? It becomes a habit, and it becomes something that you can't help but do, right? It just becomes automatic. And so I invite you to try that. For the next couple of days while you're out shopping and grocery shopping and everything else, take a few moments while you're doing this and just look around you and everyone who you can see. And you can set an alarm to go off to do this, or you could just do it every time you go in a store. You could do it every time you're in the car, whatever works for you, right? But get into a practice of doing that every day, of stopping for just a couple of seconds, just looking around and saying, you know what, I wish you well. I hope you're having a great day. I hope you're not suffering today. I hope you're healthy. I hope you're happy. And try that for a couple of weeks and see the difference it makes in you. See how you feel. Because what happens is when we do this, we create a habit so that every time we meet someone, we automatically have compassion for them, right? And then, then what we're doing is we're part of the solution, right? We're part of what's right with the world, not part of what's wrong with the world. So join me and become part of what's right with the world, okay? If you want any more information on how to do this practice, if you want some more tips and pro tips, as it were, I can certainly help you with that, okay? So check it out, and I wish you well. Again, I'll be back tomorrow to talk about presence versus presents. I can't wait for that one. I'll talk to you, everybody. Have a good day, and I wish you well. And yeah, really, just remember that people out there are suffering, and if you assume that people are suffering, then that's going to drive you to be more compassionate, which is ultimately going to be good for your health and well-being. All right, thanks again for watching. Thanks again for listening. I wish you well, and I'll be back again tomorrow. Take care.